Hello. So today I'm going to talk about arrays. So what is an array? An array is actually a list that contains several variables. So let me give you an example. Let's say you have name of some people. So let's say you have three names, right? Um, Now what you want to do is print out these names. So how are you going to print out each name? You need to call each variable, right? So name 1, name 2, and name 3. So this is how you gonna print these names. So if I try to print, then I'll get the names. If you actually see, this is not efficient. Even if you try to print everything in one print statement, you have to tell the name, like name 2, name 3. And what if you have thousands of names? Do you want to type each name, like name 1, name 2, name 3 until name 1000? Do you think it's practical to write that many variables name? And not only that, it's even hard to remember these names. So uh, let's say there are a lot of variables and the name you gave, your name you given is not really rememberable. So if I have thousands of variables and the code I wrote is like there's like, I don't know, 2000 lines of code, and at the beginning of the code I initialize these variables, and at the end of the code I have to print all of them. So it's really hard, yeah, it's really inefficient. So this is one of the example, uh, the benefit of using arrays. So how we declare an array, right? So what you're gonna do, you need to tell what kind of data variables, what kind of data that you're gonna store in this array. So let's say you want to store integers. So what are you gonna do? You're gonna tell int, and then you're gonna use these square brackets, and then names, and then int, and then you tell the size of how many names that you're gonna store in it. So I want to store 5 names, and that is all. This is how this is how you create an array. So this is like creating a list. So now how you gonna enter the names into this array? So an array will have index. So so there are a lot of names. Okay, here in this array we got 5 names. So how we gonna retrieve the names from the array? So each name will be given a unique number, and that number is called index, and it starts from 0 until the number of elements in the array minus 1. So in this case it starts from 0 and end at 4. So it's 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, which has 5 elements. The first so now you can tell which name will be given in which index. So let's say in the first index, or actually the first will be 0. So the first index I'm assigning Richard, and let's say at the end, oops, actually we are using int, so let's just assign a number, so 12. So at the first index I'm assigning 12. Let's say at the last index, which is 4, I'm assigning another number, which is 100. So this is how you assign these values. And how you're going to retrieve it? We retrieve the same way. You tell names, and then you tell which index you want the element. So if I try to print this, I'll get 12. So it's pretty simple, right? It's basically a list of variables. So um, where now instead of using a different variable to store different elements, I can create one array and then assign these elements into the index. Or the index you can kind of consider as a parking lot. So if you have five size, if the size is 5, then that means there's a parking size of 5 cars. So the first car is 0, then 1, 2, 3, 4. Then you can assign an element to this index. So let's say I assign the names 1 is equals to 13, the names 2 is equals to 20, the names 3 is equals to 22. And let's say now I want to print 5 elements. So this is what I told just now. So if I want to print 5 of the names, I have to write every single name, right? I need to write the name of every single variable. But now I can use a cheat code, say a for loop. Okay, before I tell how to use a for loop, the arrays have a method called length, which will basically return the number of elements in the array. So if I tell names dot length, I will get the number of elements. So let's try to print how many. Let's try to see how many elements in the name there are. There are 5. Actually, let me comment this out first. So if I try to print this, there are 5 elements in the array called names. So how am I going to use this in the for loop? So for, you start from 0 until should be smaller than the array's length, and then you try to print the names, the array name, and then the index, and that's all. If I try to print this, I can print all the elements in the array. Actually, let me comment this. Okay, now we got 5 elements printed out. So instead of writing names 0 and names 1 and names 2, I can create a for loop to print every single element. So there are actually two types to create an array, two ways to create an array, right? First is you give the size and then you assign the values. Second is let's create for the names, right? So second is you assign the values when you are declaring the array. So string array square bracket names is you use this bracket, curly bracket, and then inside of it names of friends. Okay, inside of it you give all the values. So Rachel, Ross, Chandler, and now you don't really have to give the length, as the Java can already see how many number of elements are there, so you don't really have to give the size. So if I try to print this, we can use the same for loop and then just change the name of the variable, and then it should be good, and yep, we got to print the arrays. So the last thing, there's actually another method to iterate through the elements. So a name for these things, right, is iterating through the elements. So you're going through each elements. So I know this is simple, but that's actually a code we can use that is shorter. So how? Well, I'm gonna okay. First, I'm gonna tell what kind of data type that the array holds. So string, and then you're going to give a random name, a random variable. So I'm going to use x, and then two dots, and then you tell the name of the array, and now you can just print out the x. And this is another way to iterate through the array. So the x, right, you can give any name, like you can give y, you can tell names. The name of this thing doesn't matter, but it's like the x holds the element from this array. So each loop, the x will hold one of the element from this array. So I just print out the x, which because it basically holds the element, right? So if I try to print this, then yep, that's what we get. So that's all about arrays, and thank you.